Hey YouTube, what's up? Morning now, I'm in a weird mood today, so it's a good day to film. For many years before the tubes of you, or even before dumb phones were a thing, I was in what I would call a counter cult ministry, and it all started with two nice Jehovah's Witnesses who came to my door and caused quite the domino effect. But not like what you'd think. They got me in quite the theological chokehold that caused me to actually read and study my Bible, which made me realize that the beliefs that I had were New Age, New Thought, and not biblical, which then I repented of, but then realized that what my J-dubs were believing wasn't biblical either, so what's up with that? And then that caused me to go down the wonderful rabbit hole of learning about Jehovah's Witnesses, mind control, and cults. And this actually taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of people skills, how to challenge someone with differing beliefs without being an absolute jerk about it, and how to love them while still disagreeing with them. It taught me when to hold my ground and when to own my mistakes and how not to own someone else's reaction to my challenges to them. In other words, if they get mad at me because I'm being a provoking jerk, then that's on me. But if they get mad at me because I've kindly challenged their beliefs and they're big mad about it, then that's on them. But all of this also taught me a lot about cults. What are they? What makes a cult? What are the methods they use? Why do people fall for this? And so much more. I learned that critical thinking is quite important in aligning your beliefs with reality. I learned that there are very smart and very wonderful people that get taken captive by cults. So I thought I'd make a video telling you the things I learned from people much smarter than me in hopes of helping you become smarter. So let's start with the basics. What makes up a cult? I hear lots of people throwing around the word cult, like people do the word love or narcissism. It's just sort of lost its meaning because it's so overused and misunderstood, in my opinion. First, let me just tell you what a cult is not, all right? Someone that has different beliefs than you does not equal that they are then in a cult. This is probably the correlation I hear the most, and it's just simply not true all the time or even fair. If anything, this is a fallacy to just dismiss what the other person is saying and an easy and lazy way out of not having to think about your own position. Second, a cult isn't just some small group of people in a house far, far away with tinfoil hats on and Kool-Aid in the fridge. The scary truth is that anybody can be involved in a cult. Really, really intelligent people have been involved in cults. But there are actually specifics for what makes up a cult. They're characterized by several key elements that set them apart from mainstream groups. First, they typically feature a charismatic leader or more who possesses qualities like charm, confidence. They're hilarious. Second, another aspect of cults is they often adhere to an exclusive belief system that includes extreme religious doctrines, conspiracy theories, apocalyptic prophecies. Members are sometimes isolated either physically or psychologically from the outside world, and it fosters a dependency on the group for social and emotional support. Control over information is another hallmark of cults. They tightly regulate access to outside information and discourage critical thinking. Cults exercise behavior control as well, dictating sometimes daily routines, your relationships, who you can talk to, even dress codes. There are also thought control tactics such as thought stopping and black and white thinking. Both of these are used to manipulate members' thoughts and beliefs. And then there's emotional manipulation, which is employed to keep members obedient with fear, guilt, shame, promises of love and acceptance. Those are common tools. Now I'm going to elaborate more on each of these through what's called the BITE model, which is control over behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions. This was developed by a man named Stephen Hassan, who is a cult expert, and he has a very interesting story and background of being in a cult himself called the Moonies. You might have heard of them. I respect much of his work and find it to be very valuable. And when I first learned about this model back in the day, I actually thought it was quite brilliant. Mind control was my favorite thing to teach on when I talked about the Jehovah's Witnesses, and was always the first thing I started with because I needed Christians to understand why Majeda was so resistant to facts, even if it was presented to them right in front of their faces, yet still flat out rejected it. And of course, this isn't confined to just Jehovah's Witnesses. They were just the catalyst that I first learned about these behaviors. This model is also easy to remember, and when compared to high control groups, it's like it fits like a glove. Now keep in mind, everything that I'm going to share with you is not isolated to just religion and spirituality. This is found in social and political movements as well. All right, now the first thing that we're going to go over in the BITE model is behavior control. Behavior control in cults involves regulating and manipulating the actions and conduct of members to establish compliance and dependence on the group. They might implement strict rules, guidelines like dress codes. They tell you what you can and can't wear, what color hair you can have, and just overall dictate your entire look. There might even be specific clothing, uniforms, symbols that identify them as part of the group. There's restrictions on contact with outsiders. Members might be discouraged or prohibited completely from associating with friends, family, or anyone who is not part of the group. They make the person feel like they will take them away from the group, from the truth, right, that the group has. This group has the truth, they have the truth, and they're trying to take you away from it and impose a sense of superiority within the group, and anyone outside should be either feared or seen as a threat. There can be a regulation of sleep patterns or even what they can and can't eat. Some cults enforce sleep deprivation or dictate when members should sleep and when they should wake. They keep them so busy and so tired. The last thing I'll mention, which I talked about before, is the rigid expectation to adhere unquestioningly to authority. If you go against them, you might as well be going against God. This can seriously affect, by the way, how somebody sees God. They gain the trust of other people, and this is a key factor. They often claim unique special knowledge or divine connections. But here is a huge red flag for you. These leaders demand unquestioning devotion from their followers. You're not allowed to question them. Any dissent or criticism is met with punishment or emotional manipulation. It's not seen as like, oh, bummer, darn, Jimmy doesn't agree with me. Oh, well, let's just go be pals and grab dinner. No, you have to agree with the leader or else you're not invited to the pizza party. Guys, if you are in a church, a political group, or even a social group online, and you're not allowed to question what you've been told by the leadership or influencer or whoever it is, or you'll be looked at as the enemy, that's a huge red flag. Questions are not the enemy. Not allowing answers is. Not allowing truth is. And look, here's the thing. If truth harms your beliefs, then your beliefs are not grounded in truth, and it deserves to be examined. And if someone is speaking truth to you, all right, and say you don't like it and you reject it, that's a whole other problem. But to be in a group where you're taught and told something by leadership and you actually want to test it or are critically thinking about what they're saying and ask questions but are shamed or silenced when you do, this is me giving you permission to do the opposite and question those leaders. All questions aren't allowed, only approved questions are, to give you the illusion of free thought. You are manipulated into blind obedience. There can be an expectation on you to ask the leaders or leader for permission to make any big life decisions like getting married, buying a home, moving, having kids, and much more, leading to a really unhealthy dependence on the leader. This is also true of secular cultish movements, I've noticed. You do what they say and follow their lead, or you are shunned from that group. You're not just in simple disagreement with them, and they still love you and you love them in that disagreement. Oh no. You can form, or you're now the enemy. Now, next on the BITE model is information control. And I have to say, this is one of my favorites because I find it so fascinating and probably the easiest to spot, in my opinion. Information control can come in a few forms. Basically, it's limiting the access to information that's not sympathetic or in agreement with the group's ideology. You're not allowed to look at anything critical of the group. They will promote the cult's own beliefs and ideology as the sole source of truth. In other words, they will not say to you, hey, go ahead and really look at all sides of this. Do your homework. Ask lots of good questions and research. Look for the truth and go with that no matter what. And use your free thinking and brain to do so. No, they will not say that. They'll say something like, sure, you can ask all the questions you want, but here's a list of the approved questions you can ask and the approved spaces and people to talk to about this. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a Christian and I do think that there's certain spiritual sources that can feed into me as a Christian and give me good Christian advice. But that does not mean that there's somebody that's not a Christian that doesn't have some sort of wisdom to offer. It's that discernment. It's understanding what is true and what is not. And then my ability to discern and look for information from a variety of sources. Cults don't allow that. They make you afraid to do that. Critical reading and research is discouraged and prohibited. So picture it. You're surfing the net and come across something that looks like it's critical of your group's beliefs. You immediately remember a recent conversation with another group member or leader where they have said that you should always avoid looking at critical information because these critics are just full of hate. They're demonized or not as enlightened as you are. This includes reading books, articles, websites that are critical of the cult's beliefs. So I wear many hats in ministry. I do satire, theology, Christian stuff, cultural stuff. But as an apologist, that's exactly what you do. You go and you look at the critical information against Christianity because you want to know what's true. You test everything. What are they saying? Is it true? Because if it's true, that's where we should go. But as an apologist, to know what you believe and why you believe it involves going out and looking at what other people believe and why they believe it. It involves critical analysis of your position. There's also an isolation of members from outsiders. I talked about this a little bit before, and they do this from friends, family, or others who might offer alternative perspectives or support their exit from the group. There's a distortion of information to make the group's beliefs more acceptable, which includes misquoting sources or withholding information. And then there's the propaganda. Oh, the propaganda. If the only information you are forced to see or even allow yourself to see is from the group or cult, then they can say anything. And because they are the source of higher truth, the member believes it. So if reality says one thing and the group denies it and redefines it and says, no, this is what's real, then you are basically believing a delusion given from the group as if it were true. This is also how the Bible is distorted. And guys, let me just rant for just a second. Without exception, every cult or high control religious group always distorts the Bible. You will never see them say, here's the Bible. Read it on your own and think for yourself and see what it says. No, there's always a reinterpretation of the plain text to fit the preconceived ideas of the group, or there's always a reliance on feelings. More on that in just a little bit.